Hello, hello, gutsy women on this beautiful Tuesday afternoon in the United Kingdom. And I have the very lovely Susan Goodrich here today. She is a member of Gutsy Women. She's a heart centered entrepreneur. She's an empowerment coach. And she also has a title called The Dragon Whisperer. Now then, I'm going to ask Susan what the Dragon Whisperer does later on. But first of all, Susan, welcome to Gutsy Women to the group today. It's lovely to have you here.
Oh, thank you. It's an honor to be here, Dee. I was so touched when you reached out and said, "Would you be interviewed?" So yes, yeah, and I've just learned a little bit about the more about the gutsy women. I love that idea. I love that. Love that. Yeah.
Yes, and
So
it's growing beautifully. So I'm so pleased that you're here. So can you tell the audience watching live or on replay who you are, where you are, and what is the story behind what brought you to do what you do now? You know, the passion behind it, a trigger point, something like that that actually brought you here.
hmm. Well, I'm a transformational empowerment coach, women's empowerment coach mostly, and I'm also a mom, which I didn't become a mom until I was 53. And I did it on my own. And I didn't end up with one, but I ended up with two very happy, healthy, handsome twin boys. And in that process, I mean, and during that time, I was a very successful entrepreneur. Things were going really well. Life flowed. I didn't work hard. Like when I worked hard, but I also had a lot of freedom. And I recognized that that's how our lives are really meant to be that way. They're really meant to flow and we're meant to have fun because I always believe what I saw was we need to have fun and flow while make dough actually. And so but after I had my children when they were 19 months old, I lost all my care, so I didn't have the support that I needed. So I hired a coach and he got my, you know like he was a business coach, and he got me making those phone calls, the things that I was kind of avoiding. We're 95% unconscious. So I had no idea why I was avoiding those calls because I loved doing what I did, but I was burnt out. And it was in that process that I also realized that I thought, well, the industry changed as well because I used to do everything cold call. And what happened was now people were doing business by email. And I have this belief that I can't write. And it's an old story. I should say I had a belief that said I couldn't write. And so I decided but I didn't know that that's really what was going on. Again, unconscious. And so I jumped into a marketing program, and that was in 2012. So I've been in learning online marketing since 2012. And I'm like, why am I having so much trouble? But what I saw was that there were so many other women who were struggling with the same thing. And the biggest thing that I saw was the isolation and how they just felt so hopeless. I would see them in tears, and I was like, there's got to be a better way to help these women through this work because they were being coached on the strategies, the pieces to do it, but there was something that was holding them back. And I was like, there has to be a better way. And in 2012, I sold my house in Toronto and I moved to my hometown. And so I too, because I had struggled like everybody else, I ended up finally having the resources to invest in myself in transformational life coaching. And I've found, a process that not only really works for other women, but it worked for me because we got to practice on ourselves, like practice in pods. And I love that, right? We really need to do the work, right? Because if we're going to be a healer, we need to do the healing ourselves, right? We don't just take the work and then just, apply it to everyone else. And so it was really seeing these women in isolation that really drew me to do this work. And it was when I saw even more women that I was in a group with really struggling with this. And I thought, you know what? I have been an entrepreneur. I know what entrepreneurship looks like. So I created a roadmap or a blueprint, I'll call it. And based on how I ran my other business very successfully, and I overlaid the transformational processes that I learned, transformational life processes, and I tested it out, and I was blown away by the results that people were getting
Mm.
because we are so unconscious, right? Coming to awareness, right? That's why I've chosen to do this, is to help heart-centered entrepreneurs get past those blocks.
Yeah, because I think what tends to happen is we forget that there are things that hold us back in life, and we're not even aware. Like you said, they're unconscious blocks. We're not aware of these things, and when we can rise them up to the surface and actually see them for what they are, then only then can we manage them, can't we? And actually unravel all the knots around, where did I find it, how, when was this told to me, all of those kinds of things. Are these the kind of questions that you would put to the people that you work with, the women that you work with?
Well, absolutely. So we know that awareness is the first step. I have, I've kind of created, I always create my own processes. That's just who I am. And I've come up with this like 8 steps to lasting transformation. And I mean, the last one is the longest one. It's the practice, right? The practices of shifting, rewiring our brain. And we have to do those practices. But the awareness, as you know, is the hardest part, right? Because we're 95% unconscious. We just don't know. That's where the dragon whisper came in. So I decided, because I saw this in myself, there were areas that I wasn't doing my business. And I'm like, why am I not doing this? And I remember the other day, one of the new dragons showed up, and it was like the fog wrath. It was like I was showing up and I was like, I've completely forgotten what I was going to do. I've like completely gone blank. What was I intending on doing? And I was like, why am I forgetting? And it really is just a part of, you and I know that there's these protectors, right? It's our unconscious, right? They're the stories that we tell ourselves, right? And they really, when I became aware, because I've studied the saboteurs and those critical voice, I've studied those upside down, inside out. And I was like, it was only when I became super aware that they're really there to protect us. They're old stories, and they love us so much that it's really hard to get past them, because they would do absolutely anything to protect us from stepping into that next level, because the old story was it wasn't safe. But that's an old story. And when we recognize those stories, right? And that's what it's one of the reasons I developed the dragon. I have a dragon quiz that's coming up. It's not launched yet, but I have a wait list for it. So if anybody wants to get on it, you can get on the wait list. And the idea is you take the quiz, and then you can identify the parts that the dragons that are blocking you. Because what we know is that through mythology, through story, we start to recognize ourselves. It's an easier way to understand. And that's really what this is. So it's about transforming those dragons. First of all, we have to know who they are. We have to meet them. And they're not there they may look evil, but they're really only there protecting us. They love us so much. Yeah.
It's what I'm picking up is that you're rewording a strategy that I would use within hypnotherapy to help people to turn that around and actually see why they're there, what they're there for. And we can actually then say, thank you very much for trying to protect me, but I can take it from here, thank you. And now I know where I'm going and what I'm doing. So, and I would imagine the dragon is, why did you choose dragon? Is it because it was the sleeping dragon that we don't know is there? Why did you choose dragon?
You know
That's
what? I
fascinating
don't
for me.
honestly know. They just came, they dropped in. I do a lot of downloads, and they just dropped in, and I started just expanding on them, and it was like, ooh, because I have, these four pillars of business, and I know that each one of those has three spokes off of it. And I was like, oh, right, what are the pieces? Where are people, falling apart? But and then what happens is that I noticed that, there might be one part of your business that's not functioning properly. And it's not unlikely to have more than one dragon. I remember even doing a saboteur thing, and I ended up with, it was called the Reform Your Inner Mean Girls work. And I ended up with like a gaggle of gals, right? I had five archetypes that were here infiltrating my psyche that were holding me back from doing things. And so, yeah, so it's like learning to step through those, and they show up because what I know is those stories, right? Even if that story, that dragon, that protector got created when we were little, how many times through your life has it been reinforced?
Mm. Oh yeah.
Right? Right? I did a meditation one day. I was doing a recording and a meditation to bring people through that. And I think probably maybe it might even be hypnotic the way that I do my work. And it just I was in it, and I started like even processing my own stuff, and I realized, 45 minutes later, how many times had I reinforced one of those stories, right? And
Mm.
how can I ready to let it go, right?
Mm.
But because it's not just a one time, right? It's not normally. I mean, it gets created from one instance, but then it gets reinforced. That's what I see.
Mm. Because they're the repetitive patterns, I would imagine. Yeah. And that's where
Well,
the
they come up,
reinforcement
so
comes up.
yeah, because they show up when we're in a similar situation.
Yes. Yeah. It's fascinating stuff. So do you have kind of incidences where you think there's one particular dragon that is common with everybody that seems to be the major driving force, or is it just a mix of everything?
No, I think it's a mix. I think some people are really, really good with their money, though not a lot of people are, right? Um, Certainly the imposter dragon, we've heard of the imposter syndrome. So I have the imposter dragon, and then the avoidance dragon. Those are a couple. And as I mentioned, I have the fog wrath who makes me forget, right?
Mm.
Literally just makes me forget. I have no idea. I don't think that showed up until I moved away from Toronto. I don't know.
Mm.
That one just showed up. But do I think there's a common one? Probably the burnout basilisk,
Mm.
because our culture has taught us to work hard, because some of it is really about, it's, some of those stories are cultural stories, or they're ancestral stories, right, that are handed down. They're not necessarily just specific to your business, they're specific to culture. I mean, I have a story about that. I mean, I had this great business, right, that I was, and I only taught because I was a teacher in the engineering environment. I would go in and I would teach the software for 4 solid days. It was hard work. It was kind of boot camp, but I would spend, that was only 4 days a month that pretty much that I would be teaching. And the rest of the time I would, work the business, but I would also go out and have fun. And I love to shop and I love to decorate. So I have lots of other things I love to do. But then I started going to this coffee shop in the morning. Every morning it became kind of, and there were a bunch of, I'm just going to call them grumpy old men who were sitting in the coffee shop, and they'd be like, why are you working today? And I'm like, to me, working meant I was in, teaching. I was at a client site. And I'm like, no, I'm not really working. Well, shouldn't you be working hard? And it was just, it was the stories they were telling me. And I sort of felt like, oh, I must be doing something wrong.
Mm.
Right. And we are so influenced by the people that we surround ourselves with.
Mm.
Are we not?
Oh yes, yes. I don't know who said it now, but it's like you become like the five people that you spend most time with. So make sure that you're spending time with people that you look up to, who are something to strive for, that kind of thing. So yeah, that I think that's really true in that respect. It has been for me anyway. So it's all about growth within your business, growth within yourself. And you are your business. So therefore, we need to work on this first, is the message I'm hearing from you.
Yeah. We are
So
the foundation of our business. Like when I talk about the four pillars, we are the foundation of our business. And then we have our mission, our vision, right? What is it that we really want to achieve at the end of our life? And I work with Dr. Wayne Dyer's um, The Power of Intention. I don't know if you know that book, but it's
yeah.
so powerful for me, helping people set their intention, as though they've already achieved it. And that's really powerful. It's part of the rituals or the practices that I help people with, right? And then we have our container, which is our physical environment, our offers, like what are the things that we're offering people? And then there's that whole other big one that most of us struggle with, the marketing and the sales and
Mm.
the delivery is part of that. But then there's the money piece, right? So that's the other piece of the other pillar of the business, which is really how do you flow your dough? Because I really believe we need to know what we want our money for in order for it to freely come in, because many of us block the money from coming in because we don't know what to do with it, or we've had bad stories around it, people taking it from us, those kinds of things, right? Or we've never kept any of it for ourselves. There's that whole piece around, oh, I'm not really worthy of having money, right? Those are other stories that show up. I
Mm.
see that a lot.
Yeah, that those are the money blocks tend to be a huge doorway to get through for a lot of people, because of those stories around finances. And not only for people who struggle, but it's was it what's she called, Marianne Williamson, I think she's called, and she said,
Mm-hmm.
our greatest fear is not the fear of failure, but the fear of success. And with success comes a lot of money, usually, because we measure success by money in our societies quite often. And if we have a fear of success, that could be the money block.
It could be, yeah.
Yeah.
I've reframed that piece. I love that you mentioned success. So I have a master class that I do. It's called The Secrets to Manifest Your Dream Business. And in there we really kind of define, and that's why I talk about, flowing the dough, is redefine what success is for us, right? What does success look like for us, right? Success really is about feeling fulfilled at the end of the day. Did you do what you at the end of the day, can you say, yeah, that was a really great day? Right. To me, that's more what success is. But you're right. A lot of us are trained to believe that success is about money, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's about
Yes.
money. Yeah, money will flow when we are being successful. We have to actually be successful first. We have to be in that state first. Like I talk about the abundant entrepreneur, and we need to be in those states, those emotional, physical, vibrational states in order to actually bring that in.
Mm, that's true, definitely. We have to be in the right frame of mind, the right state.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So when somebody comes to you, Sue, to do all of this fantastic work that you offer, what would their first session look like? What kind of things do they bring forward, and do you tease out of them?
Well, I do, because I have this model, this business model. I do a deep dive on it. So I take them through, like, I used to just send out an assessment, they'd fill it out, and then I would dive deeper. But I find it's just, I mean, it it's a lot of time. Like it's at least 90 minutes, if not longer. But I tease out where the biggest gap is, because we know that when we focus on the biggest gap or block, whatever it might be, when we focus on that and we start to close that, all the other gaps start to catalyze, they start to close too. Because often the belief, right, that we're holding, whether it's around money, whether it's about around relationship, because I do them all, right?
Mhm.
Well, or our belief about ourselves, when we focus on that and we start to close that belief, that story, that is affecting all these other pieces, almost all these other pieces. So the first thing I do is that deep dive. Yeah.
Mhm. And I would imagine that unlocks so much for the person before they leave your office or your, your environment, wherever it is you
Mm-hmm.
practice.
Well, and I also use human design, which really helps me fast track this stuff, because I was already doing it, because I've been told that my soul's purpose is to help other people find their soul's purpose. I was like, really? And I had been coaching these group of women, and then I discovered human design. I thought, oh, let me just see how that works in relationship to what we're doing. Maybe we can get. Anyways, I was kind of already doing it, but what it does is it helps me fast track, because it
Mm,
helps me identify who they're meant to be. You know what their greatest gifts are and what
mm.
their greatest challenges are. So it fast tracks, so I can actually get into that and we can identify that. It creates confidence like there's nothing else. It's really powerful.
I love human design. Haven't studied it deeply enough, but I do love it. I've done little bits around it, and I know what my human design is. I still don't know the depth of what all of the bits of it mean. The non-self and the self and all of that kind of stuff. So it's a really fascinating subject, and I think anybody listening to the interview today who are going, a human design, what's that about? Have a word with Sue, because she'll definitely be able to help you unravel some of the things that might be holding you back, some of the things that might actually be contributing to your physical symptoms around the anxiety and the stress and the things that we actually do in Gutsy Women Group, which is look at the mind and body connection. And so I would imagine that human design feeds into that, because it sounds like it does.
Yes. So there, especially the way that we process information. Some of us are emotional authorities. In fact, many of us are. And what that means is that we need to actually spend sometimes a day, sometimes a week, taking and doing what I call ride the emotional wave, like just being with it. Because you'll be, you'll go into a situation and you're like, ooh, I don't know if that's the right thing for me. If you're
Mm,
somebody who can't make a decision like that, there's several reasons, but one of them could be your need to ride the emotional wave, like just learning to stay with it. And one of the things that I see a lot of is that many of us have learned to take our emotions and sweep them under the carpet, especially the ones that we were taught that weren't okay. I mean, all our emotions are okay, but that whole piece about when anger shows up, right? Or frustration, right? You're not supposed to express it. And, and not only are we not supposed to taught not to express it, but we kind of interpret it as being we're not even supposed to feel it, but you
mm,
are, because there's a story, there's something in there, there's a guidance. And I believe our emotions are actually our soul's guidance system. Like it's really trying to guide us to how to make the right decision, right? That's part of it. And then there's some people are sacral, rather than emotional, and that means that they can make decisions like that. And especially if they have a single definition. I had an uncle, I remember when I was a young girl, and my uncle said to me, why can't he would ask me a question? I'm like, I don't know if I can answer that question. And it wasn't that I was so timid, it was just that's who I was as a design. But he was like, why can't you make a decision like that? And when we start to understand that people are creating decisions differently, that we're wired differently, we can be more, I want to say, more inclusive, more compassionate to how people are. And I think that was the one thing that I loved about learning about human design and learning the differences. And if you I'm going to drop the human design little thing, you can get your chart, and I'll send you a few emails out, for your audience, so they can understand. There are people who make different decisions differently. Their definitions are different. And as you mentioned, yourself and you're not self. I mean, we share a little bit about what that is too, and that depends on your type. So it's just a little bit of information to see, and I've kind of created a lot of curiosity around it. So if you need more information, reach out to me, like reach out to me, because I do human design
Mm.
readings. I've done, so here's the other thing that I've done is I've done parent child ones, because
Mm.
children don't come with a they don't come with a manual, but
Mhm.
this is the closest thing that I've seen as a manual for children.
Mm.
And I've done it with moms who've had kids in their 50s and 40s, who they still really want to help their children. And I take their designs into consideration as well, so I can see how they collaborate or how they can, support their children. Because by nature, they may be someone who's like, manifesting generator and wants to go, 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 or their children are projectors or they're generators and they're not wired the same way. So that's just, yeah, that's
That's
something that I've started doing, and I've done it for me and my kids as well.
it's
Because
it's a deep subject because it does go into the personality styles and all of that kind of thing. So I know that much, but it's a joy speaking to you, Susan, and
oh,
it's lots of subjects that you can offer people around helping them not only with the success of their business, but once you start to work on what, like you said, once you start to work on one area, other areas seem to actually just fall into place quite naturally without having to actually focus on doing anything around them. It's just one area that you need to do, and then it all starts to come together, like
mhm.
dominoes falling down, just all the way down. Yeah, you just knock one and everything else just goes.
It starts going out when you get
Yeah.
the deepest one, the one that needs to move. Yep.
Yeah. So thank you so much for being here today. I want to just say once again to the audience, hope you've enjoyed this chat as much as I have, and please connect with Sue in the group. She's more than happy to answer any questions and take comments, all of that kind of thing. I'm going to ask her to put her links in here in the group, and you will find all her links, her work, everything within the featured section in the guides for the Gutsy. It's called the Gutsy Pros, and it's a section where all of our members who are offering something to help other people in the group can put their links in. So I will put that in and show everybody where to go and how to find that out. So thank you very much for watching, everyone, and Sue and I will see you later within the group, either today or some other time.
Mm. Thanks, Dee. This was wonderful. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you so much, Sue. And let's just get this live stream off.